Hey friends, Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, and we're taking a break from our day job. Now today, I'm going to blow the lid off of Tony Romo versus Dak Prescott. The argument is, should Tony Romo get his job back coming back from injury, or should Dak Prescott stay in there? Now, of course, always they say you don't lose your job due to injury. Well, that may be true, but it has happened many, many times. So let's take our emotions out of it, and let's just look at the raw numbers and see where this should go. Okay. Tony Romo in 2014 was a fantastic quarterback. He had a 113.6 QBR rating, lapped the field on that. He has 34 touchdown passes to 9 interceptions. You can't get much better than that. I mean, if we can get that Tony Romo out there next week, I say go for it. Now, let's look at that 2014 season. If we take that season out of the mix, he only had one other season, the 2011 season, that he was over 100, had a 102. Every other year that he played, he was always under 97, and his career average on QBR is 97.1. Still really, really good, but it's not exactly, the be-all, end-all. Now, that 2014 season, he had DeMarco Murray, who was balls to the wall, the best running back far and away in the NFL. He had the best offensive line, so it wasn't reliant on his arm to win games. And because teams were focusing in stopping DeMarco Murray in that running game, it gave him a lot of easy passes. Now, that's basically the same type of offense that he would be stepping back into it. But the question you have to ask is, are we going to be able to get that Tony Romo now, a year and a half later, after having 3 injuries and basically a couple weeks of training camp coming into the season cold? Well, I'm not sure that you do, because in the NFL, players get old overnight, and as you get older, it gets to be harder and harder. Take DeMarcus Ware, for example. DeMarcus Ware was still a productive player when he was here in Dallas. He wasn't worth the $16 million that they would have had to take as a cap hit, but you can see his numbers kept going downhill. He got the Super Bowl ring, and congratulations to you. I wish you could have done that with the Cowboys, but he stayed injured more. Pretty much every season that he left, he was injured and missing time, and his numbers steadily went downhill. And unfortunately, it kind of happens with quarterbacks too. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the raw numbers of 2014, where Tony Romo played 3.5 games, basically. He, started 2, got injured, started 2, got injured. So he had 4 games last year, same number that Dak has had this year. All right, let's go to the numbers. Okay, so as you can see, my assistant, I won't say lovely assistant, Joe Boo, is pointing out that Tony Romo, over those 4 games that he played last year, had 5 TD passes and 7 interceptions. Dak so far has had 3 touchdown passes to no interceptions. Now, that number 3 could actually have been a 6 if you look at some of the passes that were dropped. I mean, had Cole Beasley held onto that one down on the goal line, he definitely had 6. Had Dez not dropped that one in the end zone against the Giants, that's 6. If Bryce Butler could have pulled that ball in last week against the 49ers, that would have been another 6. But we'll leave it at the 3 touchdowns. The key number, of course, is 0. And I say 0 turnovers. Turnovers are a team killer. And that was our biggest problem last year, is we had too many turnovers and we didn't get enough takeaways. That changes the whole momentum of a game. That is a key statistic. Okay? Now, one other thing we can also add to this number is Dak has rushed for 2 more touchdowns. It's a whole nother element that we have with that offense. So you look at the raw numbers through 4 games. Again, Tony Romo dropped out 2 of those games, had 884 yards, 68.6, excuse me, I ran out of 8s, so I had to draw that 8 in there. 68.6 percentage completions for a 79.4 QBR. Dak thus far has thrown for over 1,000 yards in those 4 games with a 67.9% completion. So, I mean, completion rates are about the same. And his QBR, though, is way higher. So the question you have to ask is, if you're bringing Tony Romo in, what are you expecting him to do that Dak's not doing? I mean, this is what we have to go on of what he did last year. You're still talking about a guy who had very limited time in training camp and had 2 half quarters of preseason football, who's coming back after 3 major injuries. who's coming in cold to start playing. Now, whether they say this or not on ESPN, because ESPN and those guys, they're always going to tell you, their gut feeling. Remember how we always heard that Tony Romo was a choker, when in fact he had more comebacks than anybody else, including Captain Comeback, Roger Staubach? Well, now they're doing the same thing when they're telling you that with all that Tony Romo has done, he should end up being the starter. Well, here's the thing. They're looking at stuff to talk about. And if there's a quarterback controversy out there, that gives them more fuel for the fire, because whether the Cowboys are doing good or doing bad, they're going to talk about them. But if we purely go by the numbers, you stick with Dak Prescott. That offense is now becoming Dak's offense. He's able to do the bootleg options, and he's able to pick up those guys. He's able to run. And what happens with football players is you get used to playing with the guy beside you or your quarterback. You know where he's going to be. As a receiver, you look at how Cole Beasley has developed under Dak Prescott in ways that he did not with Tony Romo. All of a sudden, now everybody's got to shift to Tony Romo and his style of play. And in the NFL, it doesn't take much to all of a sudden go on a losing streak. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. And the other key thing they always say is your best ability is your availability. Now, again, I think the best bet, you play with Dak Prescott, Dak gets hurt, you now bring in a Pro Bowl quarterback. If Dak ends up going through a rough spell, then you can bring in a Pro Bowl quarterback. But until that time happens, Dak is your starter. Now again, I'm just a guy with a voodoo doll and a day job, so what do I know? But that's my thoughts, and that's my numbers to back it up. I'm Mark Holmes. That's my helper, Cowboy Joe Boo, and thank you for watching the Joe Boo Report. And if you would, click subscribe, share it with a friend, and if you have any questions, comments, or something you'd like me to do a video about, please leave a comment for me, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you very much.